In the history of the NBA draft lottery, we've had some pretty surprising results where teams with the slimmest of odds moved into the top 4, what used to be the top 3 prior to 2019, and sometimes even landed the number 1 pick. The Orlando Magic in 1993 won the lottery with just a 1.5% chance at getting the number 1 pick. This, of course, the year after they secured the number 1 pick in 1992, which netted them Shaquille O'Neal. The Chicago Bulls in 2008 had a 1.7% chance at the number 1 pick, which gave them the opportunity to draft their hometown star in Derrick Rose. The Cavs in 2014, with back-to-back number 1 picks, also a 1.7% chance that year. And of course, in recent history, last season, the Atlanta Hawks walked away with the number 1 pick at just a 3% chance. The NBA, of course, instituted the lottery to disincentivize tanking, where teams purposely try to be bad to get a top pick. And over the years, they've restructured the lottery odds to try and discourage teams from intentionally losing. And you could argue over the past couple of years, it's worked, as the team with the worst record in the league for the 3rd straight season fell out of the top 4. But this draft lottery in 2025 has arguably been the most suspicious we've seen to date. And while I firmly believe the draft lottery is not rigged, which I'll explain why, but if there was ever a time to question the results and validity of the draft lottery, it's this year, after the Dallas Mavericks, who had a 1.8% chance of getting the number 1 pick and winning the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, especially with everything that went down with that franchise this season. Let's talk about it. Now, I want to start by going over all the reasons why the NBA draft lottery is not rigged, which I know there's going to be a lot of people in the comments who are going to disagree and will go in on me shouting that it's clearly rigged. But what you have to understand is that, one, not only do they have representatives from every team in the lottery in the drawing room watching the drawing happen in real time, they also have members of the media in the room watching the drawing as well. So you have multiple people verifying the results with their own eyes. And when it comes to members of the media, if they learned or discovered that it was rigged, that is a news story they would be dying to break, because it would be a massive, massive scandal. The other reason this thing cannot be rigged is that it's audited and the results are certified by the accounting firm of Ernst & Young, one of the biggest firms in the world that also certifies the results of other major events like the Oscars and Golden Globes. Ernst & Young would not risk their multi-billion-dollar business and ruin their company just to help the NBA rig the results of the draft lottery. And not only that, the NBA itself wouldn't risk its credibility and legitimacy all for rigging the results of the draft lottery, because eventually at some point it would come out. Now, all that said, the way the draft lottery went down this year was very highly suspicious, because it would just be so fitting for a team that executed one of the worst trades in league history and getting so little in return for a top 5 player in the NBA, Luka Doncic, that in the the same offseason, they would walk away with the number 1 pick. And not just any number 1 pick, but a number 1 pick that features a generational talent, a franchise-changing player. Because look, when it comes to the Luka trade that happened prior to the deadline, what was the most shocking about the trade was how it went down. Like, forget for a second the fact that the Mavs decided they didn't want Luka anymore because they didn't think that they could win with him because he was so bad on defense. If they wanted to get out of the Luka Doncic business, that's fine. But the manner in which they did it, only going to the Lakers and discussing a proposed trade rather than making it known to the rest of the league that Luka was available and starting a massive bidding war between all 29 teams to get the best possible return for your franchise player and superstar, is front office malpractice. That's why so many people were baffled with this trade, that all the Mavs were able to get in return was 1 first-round pick 4 years out in the future and an aging, injury-prone Anthony Davis. That's why there was so much public outcry. Like, if you want to trade Luka in his prime, fine. Still insane after he just took you to the finals, but fine. But you better get a massive haul for trading a generational talent in his prime. So when we learned that the Mavs went to the Lakers, and only the Lakers, and worked out a deal with them directly, it looked highly suspicious that there wasn't some sort of under-the-table deal or a wink-wink kind of agreement that they would be compensated in another form. A lot of people talked about Nico Harrison getting paid a bunch of money under the table, or at the ownership level that they were promised to be moved to Vegas, which is something new owners have an interest in doing. Like, it was the only way we could rationalize this trade when just looking at its face value. But is it possible that maybe the Mavs were promised Cooper Flag? The NBA said, hey, if you can get Luka to LA in the biggest market, a global brand, help the overall TV ratings, we'll make sure you are taken care of. That, of course, compensating you with getting Cooper Flag. Because let's be real, if you traded Luka, but you knew you were getting Cooper Flag in the package in return, I would say that that's worth it. Exchange one franchise player for another, but one that is much younger, only 18, and a ton of upside. If you knew by trading Luka you would get Cooper Flag, I would argue that's a good deal. Still a risky move, but it's a good deal. So to me, That's what makes this draft lottery all the more suspicious, because I feel like even months later, we're all still trying to understand why. Why would the Mavs do this trade that they did with the Lakers for their franchise player? Why would they be okay getting such little in return? And why would they only go to one team when you know that if you open this up to the league, you could have gotten so much more? And when we can't understand something, when we can't justify a trade because it seems so lopsided, naturally, you're going to start coming up with various conspiracy theories and other forms of collusion because we can't make sense of it. Like, forget the fact the Mavs landed Cooper Flagg and now they're going to be fine as a franchise. The Luka Doncic trade to this day still does not make sense. It does not make sense that they were okay with accepting such little in return for Luka Doncic. And again, I don't think it's rigged because it would be so hard to pull off and so risky to jeopardize the league's business as well as the business of Ernst & Young, but man, is it highly suspicious. Aside from the suspicions though, boy did the basketball gods throw Nico Harrison a bone, because all that anger, all that backlash and criticism from fans is now tempered by the Mavs getting Cooper Flagg. Can't say he really deserved to have another franchise player fall into his lap on a 1.8% chance of getting it, but here we are. On a personal fan note, the draft lottery really hit me hard because, as some of you know, the Bulls, who tied with the Mavs in the regular season record, lost the tiebreaker coin flip to determine who would have the pre-lottery position of 11th versus 12th. And lo and behold, the Mavs would win the coin flip to get 11th, which means had the Bulls won that coin flip, they would have been the ones to get the number 1 pick and had a chance to land a franchise-altering player for a franchise that has been so desperately trying to crawl its way back to relevancy and respectability again. That was a gut shot to Bulls fans around the world who were this close, knew that we were this close to landing Cooper Flagg. I will say though, while the NBA has been doing everything they can to try and curb tanking by flattening the lottery odds in recent years, what's happened over the last 2 draft lotteries where play-in teams ended with the number 1 pick and the worst teams in the league fell out of the top 4, you would think, hey, it's actually working because the worst of the worst aren't getting the top picks that they've been wanting. But at the end of the day, is this really helping the league and providing a balance in play where a team like the Mavs, who already have all-star players on their team, future Hall of Famers, win the lottery to add another generational player, while the worst teams, who are playing unwatchable basketball right now, get the 5th and 6th pick? I mean, there's so many different ways in which the league could restructure how they do the draft lottery that we could probably spend a whole video going over different methods and scenarios, but either way, it's pretty clear that the draft lottery, while good intentioned, still doesn't work and doesn't promote the best behavior and how teams should build their franchises, and it doesn't promote the competitive integrity of the game. That's just my opinion on the matter. I would love to hear what you guys think though. You let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.